A government warning of repercussions has done little to bring doctors back to hospitals, which has pushed the government to press ahead with the suspension of their licenses. We turn to Professor Cho Hee-kyung for more. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning. What would medical license being taken away mean for trainee doctors?
Well, for the doctors personally, it means that they can't practice medicine while their license is suspended. And depending on the duration of the suspension, they may not be able to actually get their specialist certification within the usual period. So career-wise, they might suffer some setback in terms of timing and so forth.
Right. Please do go ahead.
Well, what's more, I think what's pertinent is what's actually going to happen after the suspension. If they continue to defy the government and do not return to their workplace and also do not treat patients, they can actually be prosecuted as a result. And if they are found guilty of a criminal offense that ends up in a prison sentence, even if it's a suspended sentence, they could actually have their licenses revoked, not just suspended, which means that they will be without a license and they wouldn't be able to practice at all.
Right. Headache for job hunting is one thing, but facing criminal offense could be a lot bigger than just job hunting obstacles. Now, can the government suspend license right away then, effective as of today?
Well, indeed, the law does allow the ministry to do that, and the order to suspend the individual licenses can become effective, especially essentially straight away. I mean, it has to go through certain procedures, but it doesn't really take long. The question is whether they will be able to actually reach each of the individual doctors who have actually left their job. And whether the doctors would be able to take some sort of counteraction, some sort of legal action to defend themselves in the meantime.
Right. What kind of counter or legal actions do those trainee doctors have at the moment then?
Well, their choice is actually quite limited because there is a very clear provision under the Medical Act which allows the ministry to issue an order to individual doctors to take certain steps, such as returning to work, treating certain people, etc. But those orders, as I mentioned, have to reach the individual identified doctors. Otherwise, they are ineffective. And so the doctors can try to avoid personally actually receiving the orders. I understand that some doctors are actually preparing for constitutional challenge to the provision because essentially under the Constitution, everybody has freedom of work, which means that they should be able to choose what you do and where you do it and when you do it. But essentially, this provision takes away that freedom from doctors because of their profession. But that's going to take a very long time, and there's a big question as to whether the action would be successful, and even if they are successful, if the judgment could actually be applied retrospectively. So for the doctors, it would be an uphill struggle.
Right, there will be a lot trickier process. Now, what's most concerning is that patients are left without treatment, including those who require emergency care. Professor Cho, is there any way patients can hold the government responsible for the standoff, for not being able to keep their right to life protected, possibly?
Yeah, I think it's certainly an option that patients could explore, although for some people it might be actually a bit too late. But governments could have done something more to try to stave off this kind of standoff in the first place. But the government will then blame the doctors, saying that they're the ones who actually walked off the job, even though the government actually tried to persuade them to accept compromises. So I think also for the patients, they're not really going to see much joy in terms of taking those kind of legal actions later on. It's something that they could certainly think about, and people who have really suffered as a result of this particular set of collective action, if we can call it that, can think about. But whether it will be successful or not, I think that's going to depend on lots of different variables.
Right, not a joyful action to take in either way. That's what you're saying. Now, health authorities have granted nurses instead of doctors, those PA nurses, the right to perform some of the medical procedures normally conducted by those doctors to ease the strain on hospital staff. Now, is this also a medical violation?
Well, this is the irony, because you will remember that last year the National Assembly tried to pass this Nurse Act or Nursing Act, which actually gave some more clear division of labor in terms of nurses. And even now in lots of hospitals, it is alleged that lots of nurses actually perform duties that are outside the scope of their authorized action. And what the ministry is actually doing, although I can't really comment on the legality of it without actually seeing what sort of things that they are now being permitted to do. But it does seem like they're creeping within the scope of those things that nurses are actually not currently authorized to do under the existing legislation. So in order to counter the gap left by the doctors who have walked off, they are authorizing nurses. But this actually runs counter to what the government was arguing in terms of not allowing the legislation to be passed in the National Assembly last year. So we are in a very ironic situation. And to answer your question, there is potential illegality regarding the government's action regard to the scope of nurses' authorized duties.
Right. Nonetheless, the best scenario would be doctors do return to their work and their patients.
Of course, yeah.
All right, Professor Cho, thank you so much for your insights this morning. We appreciate it. You have a great day.
Thank you.